The Tale of the 10,000. From out of the mists of time stride the Adeptus Custodes. Their long path leads from the darkness of old night, through the fires of the Horus heresy, and out of the shadows of 10,000 years of ignorant obfuscation into the cold light of the present. In all of those hundreds of centuries, the Custodians have never faltered, and they never shall. Millennium 30 to 32. The era of glory and shame. The Great Crusade. The Emperor unites all of Terra beneath his rule, and strikes out into the galaxy at the head of his armies of unification. The Great Crusade sweeps through the void like a tidal wave, uniting the scattered worlds of humanity, and driving the Xenos races into the shadows. The Emperor leads the greatest battles of this era in person, and always at his side stride the peerless warriors of the Legio Custodes. Clad in gleaming auramite, wielding blades that crackle with fell energies, the 10,000 cut down all that stand before them, and stamp mankind's glorious authority upon the stars. The Burning of Prospero. After the triumph at Alanor, the Emperor returns to Terra to apply himself to a task of utmost secrecy and importance. The Great Crusade continues under War Master Horus of the Lunar Wars, but dark powers are at work, attempting to pervert the favored Primarch's rule and sow discord throughout the nascent Imperium. The first outward sign of the coming catastrophe is the Burning of Prospero. Magnus the Red, Primarch of the Thousand Suns, unleashes forbidden sorceries that wreak havoc upon Terra, though most will never know whether this act was one of aggression or an attempt to deliver a desperate warning of Horus's fall. In the end, the truth is immaterial. The Emperor unleashes a censure force under Constantine Valdor and Primarch Leman Russ of the Space Wars, charged with apprehending Magnus on his home world of Prospero and returning him to Terra to answer for his acts. Matters escalate rapidly, and the mission of capture becomes one of wholesale annihilation. Valdor and his custodians fighting alongside the Space Wars to overcome the sorcery of Magnus's sons. The Horus heresy. War Master Horus openly declares his allegiance to the dark gods of chaos, leading fully half of his brother Primarchs and their Space Marine legions in rebellion against the throne. War consumes the Imperium, a swift-spreading conflagration that threatens to turn to ash all the Emperor has built. Yet as his sons and their legions battle across the stars, the master of mankind is nowhere to be seen. In truth, he and his Legio Custodes are engaged in their own desperate conflict, fighting upon a trans-dimensional battlefield the Emperor once sought to tame for mankind's use. Tragically, this existential war keeps the Custodians from enacting the Emperor's vengeance upon his wayward sons. The 10,000 do not take a major role in the battle for the Imperium until the foe is beating at the very gates of the Emperor's palace. An unthinkable cost. At the culmination of the Siege of Terra, the Emperor leads a last-ditch boarding action against Horus's battle barge, the Vengeful Spirit. He meets Horus in a single combat and defeats him at last, but the cost is appalling. Though they cut down traitors and demons beyond count, the Legio Custodes are unable to prevent Horus from crippling the Emperor and leaving his father's mind and soul trapped in a shattered husk of a body. Grief-stricken, the Custodians bear their master's body back to Terra, there to be interned forever within the machineries of the Golden Throne. They swear a penitent's oath and don the mourning black, consigning themselves to watching over their fallen lord for the rest of time. A Legend's End. The Emperor's surviving loyal sons lead a furious war of vengeance, hounding the traitor legions across the galaxy. This period will come to be known as the Scouring, and it is a time of violent catharsis and retribution. Yet the newly reorganized Adeptus Custodes take no part in it, standing their somber watch upon the throne world and contemplating their ultimate failure. Though records conflict as to how and when, it is during this period that Captain General Constantine Valdor disappears from Imperial histories, along with his weapons and armor, which never make their way to the Hall of Armaments. The Custodians elect Valdor's successor from amongst their ranks and continue their watch. The War of the Beast. Still recovering from the events of the Horus Heresy, the Imperium is again beset. This time, it is the Orc menace that almost overruns mankind, bringing their war all the way to the gates of Terra itself. Bound by oath and duty, the Custodians take little part in the sprawling conflict, save to strike down a force of Eldari who attempt to cut a path to the Emperor's throne room during the chaos and confusion. Millennium 33 to Millennium 39. The era of vigilance unstinting. Siege of the Eternity Gate. Capitalizing upon contacts within the Far Traders Guild of the Indesic Hives, the cult of the Hedonic Lord seized control of much of the Eternity Gate spaceport. Repeated attempts are made by the Adeptus Arbites to break the heretic barricades, but every attack is hurled back by tides of fanatics. Meanwhile, word escapes the spaceport that the cultists are repurposing hundreds of heavy landers and atmospheric barges for an all-out attack upon the Imperial Palace itself. Identifying the cult activity as now posing a direct threat to the Emperor's safety, a shield host of the Adeptus Custodes launches a blistering attack. Land raiders and venerable contemptors smash through the cult's barricades. Even as sleek squadrons of Virtus Peators strike at the heretics from above. Bands of custodians tear through the cultists with merciless efficiency, driving their victims before them and trapping them in macro hangar level 142. There the cult of the Hedonic Lord are slaughtered to the last, and their deviant dreams of an attack upon the Golden Throne ground to dust. Blood will tell. Lotidus Dat Hostel runs a successful blood game, spending over a decade in hiding, evading every ward and sentry to finally reach the Sanctum Imperialis with blade in hand. Precautions are put in place to seal off his route of ingress, just in time to catch the elite Tukari killer known as the Blade of Patash, as he attempts the very same route as Dat Hostel in his efforts to slay the Emperor on the behalf of a mysterious and exceptionally persuasive patron. The Blade's ambitions, and indeed his life, meet a merciless end, though he refuses to the end to give up the identity of the one who sent him. The Ominous Gift. Halo Belt augurs reveal the Space Hulk Ominous Gift advancing inexorably out of the dark towards Terra. Using his status as a High Lord to overrule objections by the Imperial Navy, Captain General Aesoth Kumandra orders a strike by several shield companies to gut the craft from the inside and ensure its corruption is wholly purged. Those outside the Adeptus Custodes do not understand the significance, but the attack is led by the Lock Ward of the Shadowkeepers and a band of his black armored comrades. The Ominous Gift is destroyed. The wider Imperium need never know any more than that. Guardians of Greatness. A controversial act of insubordination sees Lieutenant Nathasian of the Cadian 86th slated for execution. Yet he is spared when a band of grim-faced custodians from the Aquilan Shield appear at his side in a blaze of golden light and wordlessly cut down his would-be commissariat executioners. With his remarkable bodyguards at his side, Nathasian is free to exercise his flair for unconventional tactics, which soon sees his promotion to Commander Army Group, then to War Master of an entire Imperial Crusade. The shuddering stars are swept clear of orc tribes, stopping War Daxkrag in its tracks before it can descend upon the Sol system. In the wake of Nathasian's triumph over the Greenskins, his bodyguards depart as suddenly as they had arrived, and, never once to rescind a sentence, the Commissariat see Warmaster Nathasian dead before the day is out. Millennium 40 to 41, the era of baleful premonitions. Envoys to the Omnissiah. During Abaddon the Despoiler's 8th Black Crusade, a combined force of Night Lords and Iron Warriors captures the Andromax system, and a direct threat to Terra is identified. Initially, the notoriously insular Fabricator General Uxiot of Mars refuses to pledge his aid in eliminating the heretic Astartes. However, when a diplomatic mission from the Adeptus Custodes attends his forge temple in person, the Fabricator General's ego is stroked and his mind swayed. Mere months later, a combined force of Minotaur Space Marines, Adeptus Mechanicus War Maniples, and Custodes from the Dread Host annihilates the traitors in their captured strongholds. The Mine Thieves. For 20 years, Shield Captain Tibanus Lycilius pieces together scattered crews until at last he unearths an insidious scheme by a conclave of radical Thorians to steal psychers destined for the Emperor's table and slowly starve the master of mankind. Sensing a deeper level still to this perfidy, Lycilius continues his investigations with cold, deliberate patience until at last he has concrete proof. The Inquisitors have struck a deal with High Lord Senarca, who is contriving to hide their activities in exchange for being allowed to sell the stolen psychers to wealthy nobles for exorbitant fees. At last, the Shield Captain is able to release his pent-up fury, assembling a combined force of Custodians, Sisters of Silence, and Imperial Assassins to pull the corrupt operation up by its roots. Neither the Thorians nor Senarca nor any of his inner circle survive the vengeful purge that follows. The Years of Madness. A time of strange omens and ominous whispers engulfs Terra, beginning with the disappearance of the notoriously conservative Captain General Galahoth. Battling the stagnation of Galahoth's rule, the Adeptus Custodes find themselves facing a shocking increase in cult activity, both heretical and xenophile, through the Sol system. Doomsday sects trigger Q-wars between the pilgrim tribes within the Emperor's palace itself, and the Custodians are forced to exercise their authority in the bloodiest fights they have seen in centuries. Reports from the dark cells cite a growing sense of agitation amongst the hidden inmates, and numerous support servitors have to be destroyed by the Shadowkeepers after they exhibit sudden, violent madness. Worse is to follow, as possession is revealed amongst a subsect of the Doom Scryers themselves, though not until the false predictions of the fallen Psychers sends Captain General Lancedere to his death at the Battle of the Gilded Pyre. It is amidst this climate of spiraling paranoia and danger that Captain General Trajan Valoris is elevated to command the 10,000, and he wastes no time in taking steps to regain ironclad control of Terra's defences. To stand against the storm. In the wake of Valoris' rise to power, the Adeptus Custodes enjoy their most proactive century of martial and covert action since the fall of Goj Vandir. They annihilate dozens of hidden cults, purge the polar underhives, eliminate a Vermilion-classified Xenos threat amidst the Plutonian void fortresses, and launch 32 separate extrasolar interdiction strikes. Several, it is rumoured, even utilize shattered spars of the webway to reach their targets. As word reaches Terra of ever-increasing warp storm activity, and cries for help sweep in from every corner of the galaxy, Valoris assembles the High Lords of Terra to discuss their response to this gathering storm. Yet it is at that moment that word reaches their closed sessions of an incredible disturbance on the surface of Luna, of demigods battling through the airless void at the head of great armies, and of a Primarch restored by the strangest of roads. Reboot Guilliman has returned, and Valoris knows that nothing will be the same ever again. Millennium 41, the era of restless aggression. The Battle of Lionsgate. Barely has Reboot Guilliman returned to Terra when the empiric bow waves of the Great Rift sweep over the Sol system. Riding their boiling crests comes a horde of cornate demons who burst through the skin of reality to assail Terra itself. Though this is the Adeptus Custodes' nightmare scenario, they enact their catastrophe protocols with unshakable calm and self-assurance. Storming out to meet the invaders alongside Guilliman's Ultramarines and a sizable complement of Sisters of Silence, the Custodians successfully deflect the Blood God's attempt to behead the Imperium with a single strike. Victory is bought at a steep price in irreplaceable lies, but it is victory nonetheless. In the battle's aftermath, Valoris and Guilliman quickly reach an agreement. The role of the Adeptus Custodes must change, for they can no longer effectively defend the Golden Throne from behind the palace ramparts alone. Bringers of Greatness. Reboot Guilliman announces the Indomitus Crusade, a desperate and determined undertaking by a combined Imperial force to drive back the rampaging armies of chaos. As part of this crusade, the Ultramarines Primarch intends to bear Primaris Space Marine reinforcements and the secrets behind their creation to the far-flung and hard-pressed Space Marine chapters. On the eve of his decision, a large number of emissaries Imperatus step forwards, compelled by the spirit of the Emperor to accompany the crusade. These will be the envoys who will bring Guilliman's gift to the Adeptus Astartes. Their presence will ensure that even those chapters the Primarch does not visit in person understand the gravitas of what they are offered, and set aside whatever mistrust or conservatism they might have in order to embrace the Emperor's beneficence in their hour of need. Carnage on Ghathalamor Prime. The Ghathalamor system comes under sustained attack from the heretic Astartes of the Word-Bearers Legion. As their dark apostles summon creatures from beyond the veil, the fight turns viciously against the Imperial defenders. The Mordian 85th and the Sisters of the Argent Shroud dig in to stage their last stand in the grim ruins of Ghathalamor Prime's Macro Cathedral. Their prayers for salvation ring out to the screaming skies above. Sure enough, even as hordes of traitors and abominations mobilize to attack, the Emperor answers the cries of his followers. Teleport flares erupt through the heretic lines. Gold and silver lightning leap as a combined force of custodians and grey knights storm into battle. Bolters roar and crackling blades tear through heretic flesh. Trajan Valoris, the Grand Master, and Grand Master Voldus, leading an assault that sees the traitor army shattered into battling warbands. Inspired by the sudden arrival of veritable demigods, the Mordians and Sisters of Battle advance, hymnals rising from their ranks over the roar of flamers and the scream of massed lasgun fire. Blood slicks the streets through the Macro Cathedral, corpses piling in gory heaps as word-bearers and their demonic allies fight back furiously. Yet after 3 days and nights of unremitting savagery, the Chaos host is broken in the Battle of the Statue Steps. With fresh Imperial reinforcements flooding into the wider Ghathalamor war zone, the Custodians set course for Terra, leaving the Grey Knights to deal as they see fit with the unfortunates that they rescued from the Macro Cathedral. Giants and Guards. Fighting alongside the Knights of House Crust, a shield company of the Adeptus Custodes storms the battle lines of the Necron tomb world of Trinect. They smash through the android Xenos and obliterate the cabal of cryptex at its heart, thus preventing the awakening of the ancient star god Zul-Shanek within the northern bounds of the Segmentum Solar. The Echo Vault. Led by the ambitious Chaos Lord Hadrexus, a sizable contingent of Black Legionaries fall upon the world of Dakoth. They sweep aside the planet's defending regiments and advance to secure the ancient Xenos ruins known as the Echo Vault. Before they lay claim to this mysterious structure, two of the warships known as the Moraids appear in orbit. The custodians of the Dread Host deploy in force, securing the mountain path that leads to the Echo Vault with squads of wardens who hold firm against wave after wave of attacks. Meanwhile, multiple shield companies strike at the flanks of the traitor force, pulling their formations apart and dividing their strength. Finally, a decisive force of 40 Allarus Terminators teleport into the very heart of the Black Legion lines, tearing their command structure apart and slaying Lord Hadraxus and his chosen to the last. Though dozens of custodians fall during the fighting, they smash the Black Legion invaders utterly and send their remnants fleeing back into the warp. As for the Echo Vault, it is left undisturbed, and a permanent garrison of custodian wardens left to watch over it. The dangers of excellence. Amid the horrors of the ongoing war against chaos, it is deemed heresy for administratum clerks to suggest the Adeptus Custodes could ever lose a battle, regardless of the odds. Fearing for their safety and their souls, many adepts record campaigns as imperial victories, even before the first shots are fired, should so much as a single custodian be reported active in that war zone. Needless to say, more than one system is lost to subsequent disasters, despite the custodian's endeavors. Vadrian's Quest. For millennia, the Adeptus Mechanicus has striven to maintain the esoteric technologies within the Golden Throne. Despite their best efforts, systems continue to fail, and no one still living knows how to repair them. Perceiving such dangerous ignorance as a manifest threat to the Emperor's safety, and thus falling beneath the purview of the Adeptus Custodes, Shield Captain Heraclast Vadrian consults with Trajan Valoris and receives permission to seek a solution. He gathers a band of his finest warriors aboard the cruiser Scion of Argo, and sets off following a lead that points to the lost Forge world of Morvain. On the plains of Pallas. Following the disastrous collapse of Lord Commander Ustrin's Victorium Crusade, heretic forces break through the Imperial lines on a system-wide scale. Their advance is spearheaded by the renegade armoured companies of the Vostok 7th, led by the traitorous Marshal Gregor, whose battle tanks repel every Imperial force sent to stop them. At last, upon the rocky plains of Pallas, Gregor meets his match. Screaming into battle upon their ornate steeds come Shield Captain Adalus and his company of Vertrus Praetors, multi-missiles streaking from their salvo launchers to annihilate the lead vehicles of the Vostok spearhead. The traitor tanks open fire with everything they have, seeking to spot the seemingly outmatched jet bikes from the air. Yet the Praetors weave effortlessly between the shots, weathering those blasts that do hit home, and suffering only scant casualties before they split into hunting packs and begin criss-cross strafing runs over and between the enemy armor. More renegade vehicles explode by the moment, the Vostok gunners panicking as they find themselves unable to track their hurtling tormentors. Like a shoal of razorfish, the custodians pick apart their enemies, losing less than a third of their number as they annihilate the enemy's numerically superior army. Marshal Gregor's Shadow Sword is the last vehicle slain, its immense main gun proving worse than useless against the agile and resilient Virtus Praetors, who reduce it to molten wreckage in a matter of minutes. Silent Crossing. Since the inexplicable escape of Cypher, the mysterious fallen angel, from a high-security cell in the Imperial Palace, The custodians charged with apprehending him have tirelessly attempted to reacquire their captive. Unable to find him on Terra and following a trail of fading clues, Shield Captain Dareth and his men have pressed out into the stars to continue their mission. Now they enlist the aid of the Sisters of Silence, bringing a band of the elite witch hunters aboard their frigate, Sol's Arrow, before making the perilous crossing of the Great Rift. The presence of the Silent Sisters seems to calm the madness of the Empyrean, at least enough to aid the custodians in making their dangerous journey into the Imperium Nihilus. Amidst the madness, the augurs do not detect the heavily shielded Space Marine cruiser that follows in their wake, its hull night black, and its insignia veiled. The Theosseous Tower falls. The homunculi of the Twisted Spiral raise a vast bone fortress to float amidst the gaseous atmosphere of Othana 5 in the Vordras system. As their raiding skiffs strike at the planet's gas mining platforms, which directly serve Adeptus Custodians Starkeep Prescience, it is clear that the threat cannot be ignored. Several shield companies launch strikes against the Xenos, with the Aras Custodians of the Gilded Fist leading the attack. Teleporting into the nightmarish Theosseous Tower, they overcome every fiend and abomination that assails them, before destroying the tower's graphitic membranes and sending it tumbling down to be crushed in Neptune's high-pressure depths. The surviving Drukhari flee aboard sleek warships that swiftly vanish, while the custodians evacuate in good order. Disquiet spreads, however, when several custodians are found to be missing without trace at battle's end. The Wormslayers. A gene-stealer cult calling themselves the Worms of the Tendril are discovered by Ordo Xenos agents, entrenched amongst the Nord-Afric underhives on Terra. Captain General Valores refuses a request by the Death Watch to send kill teams against this threat, instead leading a purge in person, at the head of a huge Adeptus Custodes shield host. The cult put up a brutal fight, their sheer numbers and fanaticism allowing them to drag down one custodian after another and tear them limb from limb. Yet for every one of the custodians that falls, hundreds upon hundreds of malformed cultists and aberrants are slaughtered. At last, Valores himself beheads the monstrous broodlord that ruled over the cult. He orders the creature's disturbing inner sanctum burned, despite the protests from the Ordo Xenos investigators. Valores refuses to let anyone other than his comrades witness the foul mural that decorates the sanctum's back wall, of a nest of fanged tendrils emerging from the heart of Sol itself to devour Terra whole. Zagstom's Doom. The Orcs of War Zagstom overrun the Iron Warrior's citadel of miseries after a grueling 3-year siege. Grown massive and powerful on a diet of constant warfare, and equipped with the looted tanks and war engines of the butchered Iron Warriors, Zagstom's horde board their ramshackle ships. Before they can attempt to punch their way into the warp, custodians of the Solar Watch materialize within the engine's decks and mech bays of the Greenskins' capital ships. Guns blazing, the custodians hold off the orcs long enough to plant vortex implosion detonators on every ship. The survivors then teleport back to their own ships and jump away into the warp. In attempting to give chase, the orcs trigger the vortex bombs, and their vast fleet, which Imperial Doomsquires warned would appear on the fringes of the Sol system if left unchecked, is consumed by the ferocious energy storm that follows. Duty unto death. Amidst the shadows of the Imperium Nihilus, a small Imperial fleet finds itself beset by a pair of wayward Tyranid hive ships. The Imperial flagship, the Terra Nostra, is transporting Primaris gene tech under the protection of custodian wardens. Seeing that the fleet will soon be overrun, the Guardian Shield captain orders an emergency teleport to the nearby death world of Loke 2. Pursued by Tyranid swarms, The Wardens retreat into the fume-choked volcanic highlands and prepare to defend their precious cargo to the last. Wave after wave of Tyranids surge up the perilous lava channels, but the Custodians, cleaving to their oaths of indomitable defense, repulse every attack. A month later, a relief force of Marines Malevolent arrives in orbit and drives the hive ships away with thunderous firepower. On the plant below, they find a single living Warden, grievously wounded, yet still standing over the untouched boon of technology amidst a fortress of heaped Tyranid corpses. Into the shadow. Upon the direct orders of Trajan Valorous, a small, fast-moving force of Custodians makes haste for the ruined remains of Cadia. Details of their mission are suppressed, even amongst their comrades, but they are accompanied by a number of warriors drawn from the ranks of the Shadow Keepers.